Hello YouTube, it's Lion here with Hobbies of a Man once again, and today is our monthly rambling video, which is a video where I just sit down, pick a topic, and really just go with it off the top of my head and just kind of minimize the editing here. So it's just mostly me having a conversation with you guys where we just kind of talk about something, which is purely my opinion with very little to no research, where I just kind of share an idea I have about a certain thing based off my personal experiences, right? And it's mostly just so you guys get to know me and so that we can have easygoing conversations. Now, today the topic is what's more enjoyable or what's better, science fiction or fantasy? And I don't actually have an answer for this. This is just an interesting topic to discuss because I enjoy both immensely. You know, science fiction and fantasy are at their core two sides of the same coin. And maybe it's not even two sides of the same coin. It's like the same thing, but with different approaches, right? Which is slightly different from the two sides of the same coin kind of analogy. Because if I have elves and I make them interact with humans, the only thing that changes whether it's a sci-fi story or a fantasy story is how they meet the humans, right? Is it a magic-based conflict or is it a space-age conflict, right? Is it about humans going to a different planet to engage with elves? Or is it about humans traveling to a different continent on the same planet via magic to find the elves, right? It's at its core, it's more or less the same thing with slightly different, kind of ways to go about it. Of course, the kind of thematic elements that kind of happen are also quite different. Science fiction mostly focuses on the kind of group identity of humans versus problems in society and different things that we kind of are having issues with, like a lot of conflicts of the, I think it's postmodern. It's like man versus machine, man versus society, and our kind of struggles with ourselves and the way that technology affects our lives is all more science fiction based, whereas fantasy is more about people versus people, people versus nature, and that kind of more spiritual, emotional type of stuff, whereas science fiction is more on the material and more on the pragmatic, realistic sense. I don't know how to describe it exactly because I don't have the knowledge necessary. I don't study literature, so I don't really know the exact vocabulary to kind of discuss this, but I hope you guys kind of understand what I'm trying to say. They're the same thing at their core, but the things that they discuss kind of vary widely and kind of go in different directions. But it's not really opposite directions. It's more on the same spectrum, but at different edges, if that makes sense. I don't know how to describe it, but I hope you guys understand what I'm saying. And in general, I like fantasy more because I enjoy entertainment for the sake of escapism and enjoying different things that I would never be able to experience. Now, this is true of science fiction as well, but science fiction doesn't give you that sense of escapism in the same way that fantasy does, because usually, especially hard sci-fi and military sci-fi, science fiction usually feels like it's just us, but slightly in the future with vaguely better technology. Actually, significantly better technology, but based on today's understanding of physics and stuff. So it doesn't feel like it's outlandish or it's crazy or mystical in any way. It just feels yeah, we're gonna get there eventually. We're just kind of postulating things about it in the future, for the future, just because it's fun, right? Which is different from fantasy, where it feels like I'm completely somewhere else with no connections to, the real world, which is what I enjoy about fantasy the most. However, fantasy to me is my favorite in general, but it really depends on medium whether I like fantasy or science fiction more. Now, of course, I am studying, well, I'm not studying, I'm exploring science fiction in manga because that's one area where I haven't really had much luck finding good science fiction stories. And I think in general, science fiction stories in manga are just not as common. So it just kind of depends, right? But I have a bunch of them right here that I'm kind of be exploring this month, just to kind of understand, what I like better in manga. But in general, if we're looking at different mediums, books, TV shows, and movies, I prefer fantasy in the written kind of idea, like in books, but I prefer science fiction in movies and television shows. And most of this has to do with the fact that like science fiction just looks better generally on TV than magic does, that fantasy does, because I mean, they both have the same kind of issue where it's like you have to create a bunch of different effects and you have to create these things that don't exist. But like with science fiction, it feels less bad. Like it doesn't look as bad because the things that they build and they create are more like mechanical in nature. Whereas with fantasy, a lot of it has to be natural looking, and that just looks really bad with like TV level CGI. So like I don't know, preferably I like when it comes to television, which is mostly a visual medium, I enjoy what looks better, and that just happens to be science fiction. And in fact, science fiction is just easier to write for movies and TV shows because I don't know, it just feels easier to digest and easier to understand, and it just kind of goes along better than fantasy in my opinion. And so I like it better when it comes to TV shows. In fact, it's also because a lot of superhero stuff, which is like the current big thing, is mostly science fiction. Like I mean, if we look at Marvel movies, how many of them are not science fiction? It's just like the Thor movies, right? Like that's the only non-science fiction looking one, because and even then it's kind of like science fiction because they're aliens. So like if you like superhero movies, you like science fiction. So like there you go. I mean, because like come on, Iron Man, Captain America, Black Panther, everyone literally is based on a science fiction type of thing. Like everyone has power armor, serums, or some other kind of like nature based like thing that isn't magical. Like even Black Panther's magical aspect comes from like this like steroid plant, right? So it's the superhero fantasy is basically like, or superhero stories are most of the time generally science fiction as well, at least in my mind. And so since most of my favorite movies are superhero movies or actual science fiction movies, I would assume that, you know, science fiction is my preferred medium for TV and movies. Although I guess I do enjoy fantasy shows, but not as much. Like I liked Merlin, but the actual magical aspects of it were pretty bad because they looked really shitty. And the only other one that I really enjoy is like Originals, which is like the CW Vampire Hunt, Vampire Diaries spinoff, which really had like almost no effects. All of the fantasy aspects were all very like easy to do because it was mostly like putting makeup on people's faces and stuff like that. So I don't know, like in general, just like fantasy is better in writing, in books, and science fiction to me is better in TV shows and movies. But I enjoy both equally, in my opinion. Like maybe not equally because I like reading better than watching television. So in general, it's just gonna be like, just fantasy is gonna pull ahead of science fiction. Because what the fuck am I saying? Okay, let me clear this up. I enjoy both. Fantasy is my preferred genre because my preferred medium is the one that I think fits better with fantasy. Because I enjoy escapism and kind of like going away from the real world and things that might happen in the real world, like technology, more than I enjoy speculating about the future in my entertainment, right? However, when it comes to television and movies, I prefer science fiction because it tends to look better, and I enjoy when TV shows look good. So there you go. I think that's it. Now, what are kind of like my favorite movies and television shows and stuff like that? Well, my favorite movies are Jurassic Park, Star Wars, specifically, I think Star Wars Revenge of the Sith and Star Wars Empire Strikes Back, which are like the two best ones out of the originals. I don't like any of the new ones. Like, I enjoy them, but I don't love them, especially when they start breaking like the lore of the original six and like the TV shows, with like the whole thing where like Rey heals everyone magically. But like, why can't she do that if even Anakin, like the greatest Jedi ever, couldn't? And in fact, if he would have had that, he would have never had to turn into that Darth Vader, because he would have just healed Padme. So it like breaks everything. And my favorite books are mostly fantasy books. I like science fiction books, and I like Star Wars books and stuff like that. But like, fantasy books are just better. Like, epic fantasy is just so badass. It's so cool. But I think that's just because I have like a weird enjoyment for medieval stuff, and for like this kind of like I would never want to live in a monarchy, but I enjoy the whole kind of like concept of like knights and kings and all that type of stuff. So I really enjoy fantasy for that sense. But yeah, I don't know. I think they both offer really great ways to look at the world in a way that isn't, directly linked to reality, in a way that is like enjoyable and escapist. It's just like, for me, escapism is better achieved through fantasy than it is science fiction. Now, that doesn't really mean that science fiction isn't good at escapism. It's just like my preference lies with fantasy. But I love both, and I'm really excited to check out all of these different sci-fi manga and some comic books there that I just am like, I'm really excited because I want to see how different groups of people go about creating all of these things, right? Lately, a lot of Russian and Chinese literature has been making its way to America in the form of science fiction stories, and I do want to check out some of those at some point. But like, I'm with manga right now. Manga is like my thing right now, and I just want to enjoy all of the different aspects that it has, and I'm just really excited about it. And yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this video, because that's all I have. I don't really think I said anything like at all. I don't know. I hope I said something that was kind of interesting, and if you guys have an idea or some way to like help me kind of explain myself, please let me know down in the comments, because I don't know, the point of these videos is more to enjoy a conversation and kind of discuss a topic than it really is about me sharing an opinion, or me trying to like review so that you guys can buy the best thing possible or anything like that. This is more like, here, let's be a community kind of things. So yeah, thank you guys very much for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, please leave a like, subscribe, and comment down below. Let me know what you thought. Thank you guys so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. See you guys later.